Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Commodity TV and the Precious Metal Summit here in Zurich. And we want to talk now for the first time to Nicole Adshead-Bell. She's the non-executive chairman of Hot Chile. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate this. I saw you speak last night. I thought you were a very good speaker and commentator. And so it's a privilege to be here.
Thank you very much. That's very kind. Yeah, it was big fun on the stage, honestly. And
It was.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, you did a great job. It's a hard job to do.
Yeah, it is.
There were some big personalities on that stage.
Yeah, thank you very much. But Hot Chile, what is the company about? Can you give us a short overview, please?
Sure. In a nutshell, if you like copper,
I
you
love
should
copper.
love Hot Chile. So
Yeah.
Hot Chile is an Australian-listed company with a secondary listing in Canada and OTC listing, and focus on advancing the Costa Fuego copper project in Chile. And so the Costa Fuego copper project is a very, very sizable resource, just completed a PA. We have a very strong balance sheet, which is a nice thing to have in these uncertain markets that we're in.
I would call them horrible.
Horrible. Although I spent the majority of my recent career on the buy side as an investor, and in my experience, times like this, if you have capital, they're the best times to be investing. When everybody is crying and feeling very, very upset, that's normally signaling that you're around about the lows. And so personally, I think now's a fantastic time. It's way, way easier to invest in a downwards trending market, believe it or not, than in an upwards trending market.
Yeah, definitely. You said it already, you are in the copper business. Chile is, I think, one of the most favorite place for copper and the largest copper producer in the world, Escondida, for example. And really interesting, you're on the Atacama region, I think.
We
right?
are, but in low elevation Chile. And so the two big challenges that you can have in Chile, natural location. So up elevation comes with an associated increase in capex and opex and water. The biggest risk that you have in Chile is water.
Exactly.
And what the management team, well, before I joined the board, I get to benefit from years of hard work, is 10 years ago they said, water is an exogenous risk in Chile. We think at some point you won't be able to permit continental water. We're at that point. And so they decided to go down the pathway, and this was a multi-year focus. It took 8 years to get a maritime license. So we now also have a commodity, water, that's incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. And so as one of our colleagues in Chile said, no money, no honey, no water, no project.
Yes.
And so what we have is that very, very key ingredient, which is water. We have a maritime concession. And so one of the things that we're doing at this conference, and also when we're talking to people, is that we have an asset that's incredibly valuable. We, like every company, say that we're undervalued, and of course we are, but we also have this asset that we're not getting value for, which is water. And water is the key de-risking asset everywhere in the world.
Yeah, especially in those dry regions. And I saw in your quarterly activities report, I saw that you have the license for 2,000 liters per second seawater, but you need only 600. So you can support maybe other projects and sell the water. I think that's a great side business, isn't it?
It is. I mean, obviously, we're starting to investigate potential ways that we can add value through that water, and we're in the early stages of that. But that's so impressive. I can't believe you read the activities report and you knew those numbers exactly.
Yeah, I have to. That's
yes.
part of the job.
No. And I'm sure you're meeting a lot of us. That's very impressive. Yeah. So 600 liters per second based on the current PA. Obviously, like most companies of our type, we're looking to potentially grow our production profile. And so we have lots of room to be able to also grow our water usage. We're also very aware that water is very important to local communities. We're very focused on ensuring that we're a good corporate citizen. And so it's a very, very dry part of the world. So there's ways that we can also add value, I think, from a community perspective, or creating value from our water perspective. And so we have flexibility. And in our business, flexibility around your strategy
is key.
It's key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the PEA numbers and what will be next.
Okay, so the PA was very, very robust, around $1 billion valuation, and using, I would say, pretty conservative copper prices and gold prices. So it's copper and gold primarily, with a moly and silver byproduct credit. Around about $1 billion at $1,750 gold and $375 copper, using an 8% discount rate, and huge optionality or beta to the underlying copper price. And so if you plug in higher copper numbers, obviously you have a very, very strong NPV and very, very reduced payback. So we think it's a very, very good starting point. That PA is very robust, and it's based on a resource of which the majority of the resource is the indicator category. So for those of your audience that are a bit less familiar, that means that it's a higher confidence resource. So next steps, we're in a market that doesn't appreciate developers. The minute you say you're a developer, your share price is probably down 10%. So what we have is a project that has got incredible beta optionality to the copper price, but it's real. And it's real because it has water. There's no fatal technical flaws. The one thing that we didn't mention with the water, and it helps on our CapEx, is we can use seawater for processing. So we do not need to build a desalination plant.
Oh, that saves a lot of money.
That saves a lot of money.
Ooh la la.
Yes, yes. So, and we are blessed with an abundance of existing infrastructure. So we're 50 kilometres from an existing port that's got capacity. We have an MOU with that port. We're road accessible. We have the water solution, the key risk element that has been resolved. Chile, unlike 10 years ago, has had a massive build out in power infrastructure. And so 10, 12 years ago, you're looking at plus 20 cents per kilowatt hour. And now you're probably looking at some of the lowest cost power in the world. And for those that are very concerned about ESG, I would argue we're probably maybe swung a little bit too, pendulum swung a little bit too far. At the end of the day, you're a business. But on the ESG side of things, you can theoretically also be 100% solar in the country because there's been a massive investment in solar. And it's one of the best places in the world, given the abundance of sunlight, to have solar power. So these other elements have helped this project from an economic perspective. So what we're focused on now is we have a hefty balance sheet. We have 21.8 million Australian dollars at the end of 30th of September. We had a material cash injection with a recent transaction that was announced with Osisko Gold Royalties. And so what we did was we have a choice as a company. We need to finance via the equity markets or we need to finance via a project. So we chose, it was more accretive, it was more beneficial to us to finance at the project level. So Osisko invested $15 million into the company. They acquired a 1% royalty on the copper and a 3% royalty on the gold. And something that's quite unique about that transaction is that we built in an ability to buy back half the copper and 0.5% of the gold upon a change of control event for the next 4 years. So again, when we talk about optionality and strategy, is we want to ensure that we're not burdening the asset from a perspective that you preclude any corporate interest.
Absolutely. Okay, then to the part of the question, what would be next? Because you would to do maybe a pre-feasibility study, then the feasibility.
So in the evolution of the advancement of a project, it's pre-feasibility study. We've spent a lot of money to get to that point. That would be due next year. But we're also aware that we want to ensure that we don't dilute our existing shareholders into nothingness. We have a strong balance sheet today. What should we do as a company? And we've recently had a strategy session as a board and management team that creates value and value per share. What we have is a management team that's exceptionally good at acquiring projects and adding value through the drill bit. That is how this company has been built, to have an asset that is one of the top 10 undeveloped assets in the world. And so what we're focused on is ensuring that we start doing smart exploration. We've got a lot of high priority targets. We will continue if we see the right opportunity at the right price for consolidation. And we know whatever market that you're in, negative or positive, if you has positive information on the drill bit, that's alpha performance and that drives investor interest. And so we would still argue that we have a project that is real, that can be advanced in the right market conditions, but we're also very aware that growth is what drives interest as well. And so we're ensuring that we're going to do smart exploration that's aimed at increasing our value per share.
Okay, super. So how fast do you think you can develop that to production? Just roughly, I know it's a little bit too early because my feeling is also, and I have the last 2 days interviewed a lot of companies, but my feeling is also copper is way too cheap. We need much, much more copper, and the copper markets will dry out. They are already drying out, but nobody believes it. So your copper is needed in that world. Yeah. Yeah.
And we are really good as an industry in any commodity of bringing production online when we should not. We have an elastic supply to demand response, and that the tenacity of that elastic response has increased over time. You're looking at plus 20 years from discovery to development. I absolutely agree with you. I've dropped the Kool-Aid on copper. I think it's the best investment thesis. We're going to look back on this time in 2-3 years and go, this was the investment thesis of a century. You have a perfect demand story. It doesn't matter what happens, copper demand isn't going away. And if you believe in net zero, or even a little bit in net zero, there's a massive escalation of demand. And we have a paucity of copper. Copper's production starts to fall off a cliff beginning 2025. That's less than 18 months away. And we're not acting like it's the problem that it is. So absolutely agree with you. And so we should be advancing our project aggressively when the market is screaming for us to do that, to quote Nagel, the CEO of Glencore, who said they're not bringing any more production online until that happens. So if money was no object and we were in the right market, completion of PFS and H2 next year, that document then gets submitted for you with your EIS application, is how it works in Chile. It's a 2-year timeline to get that finished. Concurrently, you'd be completing your feasibility study and also bringing your potential financiers along with you. And so in an ideal world, if you submit it at the end of 2024 into 2025, you're looking at 2 years to 2027. Best case scenario, building in 2028. But again, you only do that if it's the right time in the market. And so we are not in the middle of a build. We've seen some massive capital blowouts in our sector. Those companies can remain unnamed. And you've seen really, really big delays. And once you start building something, you can't stop. And then you're in a potential bankruptcy situation.
Yeah, it could
so
be.
We're in this perfect where we have a great asset that is a huge amount of embedded value. We have a strong balance sheet. We've got growth. It's up to us as a company to manage that in these very uncertain times that we live in.
Absolutely. Last question. Who are your major shareholders? What is management's skin in the game?
Sure. Major shareholder, the largest shareholder is Glencore. So Glencore,
yes. I'm glad to hear that. I'm a Glencore shareholder too.
Are you? That's great. Yes, Glencore own 9.2%. They also, and this is an important point to touch on because it causes some confusion, they have right to offtake. So they have a right to 60% of the offtake for the first 8 years of the life of mine at benchmark prices. If their shareholding goes below 7%, they lose those rights. And we live in a world where people are very concerned that are in the concentrate market, whether it's a trader or a smelter, about security of supply of concentrate. And the one thing I forgot to mention is our concentrate is very, very favorable. It's a clean concentrate and it can be used for blending. And so we have a valuable concentrate from the perspective of the quality of that con as well.
Glencore would love to have that.
Yes, yes. And then Blue Spec, which is the ex-chairman and founder of the company, Murray Black. They are a sizable shareholder. Management insiders own 1%, and I myself bought in the market when I joined the board as chairman at reasonably high prices, and then took a big chunky position again at the end of last year, which was perfect timing. And I think it's obviously I'm biased. I wouldn't be involved in this company if I didn't think it was a good opportunity.
Of course.
It's got all the right ingredients.
Super. That sounds like a good game plan, a perfect game plan, I would say. The world needs more copper, so please make sure you go in production.
Will do. When everybody's screaming for it, we'll go into production.
Okay, super. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was Nicole Adshead-Bell, the non-executive chairman of HOT Chile. And you heard it. This is copper from Chile that will be hopefully within the next 5 to 6 years developed into production. And I think it's a great project, especially I like the approach with the water. Then also don't forget Osisko Gold Royalties. You know them all well because we had them so often at Commodity TV, is also part here of the game. And Glencore, this is a great thing. And I think, fantastic project. Check out the company because the share price is way too cheap. It's always good to get into good stocks and quality at cheap prices. Thanks for watching us, and bye-bye from Zurich.